The day started with a small, humiliating sound. A plastic wheel snapped under my weight, and the chair tilted just enough to remind me that this place didn't care how long you lasted, only that you showed up. My spine burned, my patience thinned, and somewhere in my head, a quiet thought formed. This job was going to test me. I had joined a regional sales firm that handled surveillance installs for warehouses and clinics. Serious industry, serious talk about trust and security. The office itself felt stuck a decade behind. Scratched desks, buzzing lights, furniture that looked rescued from a clearance bin. Everyone acted like it was normal. I told myself to give it a week. I didn't. 2 days later, I rolled in something I owned. A premium ergonomic chair I used at home. It was solid, quiet. I set it at my station before anyone else arrived. Finished my calls, and for the first time since starting, I went home without pain riding shotgun. The next morning, my desk looked wrong. Too low, too empty. That chair wasn't there. I scanned the floor. Then I saw it. 3 rows over. Someone else leaned back in it like they'd won a prize. My stomach tightened. I walked over calm on the outside, annoyed everywhere else. I explained it was personal equipment, not company property. The response was a lazy grin and a shrug that said, I was wasting his time. That was the first pivot. The moment I realized this wasn't confusion, it was choice. I went to management. Not dramatic, just facts. I showed a digital invoice, serial details, everything neat. The owner glanced at the screen like it bored him. He said seating was flexible, that people grabbed what they needed. He suggested I be earlier if comfort mattered so much. I stood there thinking about how strange it was to hear that logic inside a company selling security systems. The next day, I arrived before sunrise. Coffee still too hot to drink. My desk was empty again. Same guy, same chair, same relaxed posture. Something in me cooled. I didn't argue this time. I didn't explain. I told him calmly that he had a choice to make before lunch. He laughed, said I was dramatic, turned back to his monitor. I walked out to the parking lot and sat in my car for a minute, not to cool off, to decide. I called local authorities and reported stolen personal property on private premises. I gave them documentation. I waited. When they arrived, the office energy shifted. Voices dropped. Chairs stopped moving. I pointed. They asked questions. He tried jokes. Then silence. Ownership of the item was established. There was no arguing numbers etched into metal. Management pulled me aside and hissed that I was crossing a line, that if this became official, my position wouldn't survive the day. I told him I understood. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of an arrest, the officers documented the incident and issued a formal report. The coworker avoided cuffs, but didn't avoid consequences. That report triggered a licensing review due to the industry we worked in. Security firms don't like theft, even casual theft. I was let go before the end of the hour. No paperwork explanation, just a forced smile and a box for my things. Weeks later, I found out the company lost a major contract during a compliance audit tied to that same report. The coworker resigned before his review concluded. The owner sold the business the following quarter. I still have the chair, still use it, still sit comfortably. Some people think I overreacted. I think boundaries only work when you defend them. The house went quiet in a way that made my stomach drop. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that feels like something essential just vanished. I was standing in the kitchen when my mom announced it, arms crossed, voice flat, like she was canceling cable instead of cutting off food. She said we were old enough to handle ourselves now, that groceries were no longer her responsibility, that everyone would figure it out. I was 17, still in school, no car, no savings. The fridge behind her was already half empty, and my brain started doing math it wasn't ready to solve. How many meals were left? How long before that turned into nothing? This wasn't about budgeting. I knew that immediately. This was punishment. Earlier that week, my older brother had refused to hand over money she demanded for shopping. He worked part-time, used her car daily, and somehow still decided contributing was optional. Instead of dealing with him directly, she flipped the board and punished everyone. collective consequence. Emotional scorched earth. I felt something hot rise in my chest. Not anger yet. Fear first. The kind that makes your hands tingle. She started listing rules. No shared groceries. Label your own food. Don't touch what you didn't buy. It sounded rehearsed, like she'd been waiting for an excuse. My mind raced. I pictured school days on an empty stomach, pretending I wasn't hungry, pretending everything was fine. I thought about how often she reminded us that motherhood ruined her plans, how she vented to us about regrets like we were therapists instead of her kids. And then something snapped. I asked her out loud why she chose to be a parent if she hated it this much. The words came fast, sharper than I expected. I told her it wasn't fair to make us pay for resentment we didn't create, that punishing everyone because one person pushed back wasn't discipline, it was cruelty. For a second, she looked stunned. Then her face hardened. She said she'd already done her job, that raising us was over, that if she could go back, she would have made different choices. The room felt smaller. My brother stared at his phone, silent, untouched, safe. I heard my own voice shaking, but I didn't stop. I said if regret was the real issue, it shouldn't be dumped on minors who had no exit plan. I said if consequences were necessary, they should land where the problem actually was, not on kids who couldn't drive to a grocery store even if they had money. That's when she told me I was ungrateful, disrespectful, dramatic. I went to my room and sat on the floor, staring at the wall, trying not to cry. My thoughts spiraled. What if this wasn't a threat? What if it stuck? What if tomorrow there really was nothing to eat? The next day at school, I told a counselor. I didn't mean to. It just spilled out. The empty kitchen, the rules, the fear. Her face changed immediately. Things moved fast after that. There were meetings, calls, adults using calm voices while saying serious words. Suddenly, my mom wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. She was furious, said I embarrassed her, said I'd taken things too far. But the fridge filled back up. Not magically, not happily, but it did. My brother was required to contribute. Rules were rewritten, boundaries enforced by someone other than her. The house stayed tense, but the fear eased. I could breathe again. I still think about what I said. I know it hurt. I know it wasn't gentle. But when survival is on the line, politeness stops being the priority. I didn't ask to be born. I did ask to be fed, and I don't regret standing up for that. The first thing I noticed was how practiced their smiles were, tight, shiny, the kind people wear when they're about to ask for something unreasonable and hope politeness will do the heavy lifting. It was a school fundraiser. Costumes everywhere, kids buzzing with sugar and noise. I was there for one reason only, and it wasn't to socialize with my past. I made that clear when I saw them approaching and said I'd only talk about schedules or homework. Nothing else. They nodded, agreed, then waited. Later, when the crowd thinned and I was alone near the exit, they appeared again. Too close, too quiet. My stomach sank before a single word landed. She spoke first, voice trembling, eyes glossy. She shared something intimate, medical, painful, something that usually earns sympathy without question. I froze, confused why this was being handed to me like a responsibility. I asked, carefully, what any of this had to do with me. That's when the tone shifted. He jumped in fast, heat behind his words, accusing me of lacking empathy. He said I, of all people, should understand, because I got to be a mother. He framed her as a permanent fixture in my children's lives, not by time or trust, but by decree. According to him, this confession was supposed to change everything. Their role, my boundaries, the kids' feelings. Inside my head, 1,000 thoughts collided. You broke us. You left. You rebuilt your life on a lie, and now want a standing ovation for surviving the consequences. Outwardly, I did none of that. I stepped back and said I wasn't having this conversation. Not here, not ever. I walked away before my voice could betray me. That should have been the end. It wasn't. That night, my phone lit up. Message after message, accusations, insults dressed up as moral outrage. I was called cruel for not offering comfort, heartless for not volunteering my children as emotional support animals. Apparently, my silence was a crime. Days later, he tried again. Different setting, same agenda, this time with witnesses. He brought it up casually, like a topic for group discussion, hoping pressure would corner me into compliance. Instead, I documented everything. Screenshots, dates, patterns. Something changed after that. Not dramatically, not loudly, but noticeably, the messages stopped. The public confrontations vanished. Communication rerouted through neutral channels. And for the first time since the divorce, the chaos felt contained. My kids noticed too. They relaxed. No more forced labels. No more emotional tug-of-war. Their relationship with her became what it should have been from the start. Optional, slow. On their terms, I never commented on her condition. I never needed to. Pain doesn't grant authority, and biology doesn't rewrite history. I wasn't asked to be kind. I was asked to surrender boundaries, and that's something I'm no longer willing to do, no matter how tragic the packaging. The room exploded before anyone even confirmed what happened. One second there was laughter, the next there were raised voices, frantic hands, and someone yelling her name like volume alone could fix it. My niece stood there blinking, perfectly calm, while every adult in the room spiraled. Someone said she swallowed something. Someone else said it was electronic. That word changed everything. Phones came out. Panic multiplied. I watched the energy spike and felt that familiar instinct kick in. When chaos hits, my brain doesn't scream. It gets curious. I asked what it was. No one answered me directly, just pointed at the empty charging case on the table. One earbud, missing. The expensive kind, tiny, smooth, swallowable. My niece wasn't choking. She wasn't crying. She wasn't coughing. She was more interested in a sticker on the fridge than the adults losing their minds around her. My internal thought was simple. If this thing really went down, it had to be somewhere now. And if it was still powered on, it might tell us. So I paired it. The connection tone chimed softly through my phone. That sound cut through the noise for half a second. I crouched down, pressed my ear gently against her stomach, and waited. There it was, faint, muffled, real. A tiny electronic whisper from a place electronics definitely don't belong. I laughed before I could stop myself. Not a big laugh. More like disbelief leaking out. The kind of sound your body makes when reality glitches for a second. No one else joined in. Every head snapped toward me like I'd just told a joke at a funeral. My sister's face went rigid. Someone accused me of not taking it seriously. Another person told me this wasn't funny. The room turned on me fast, and suddenly, I was the problem. I tried to explain that I wasn't dismissing anything, that I was checking, that knowing where it was mattered, that panic doesn't help kids, and she was calm because she wasn't being scared yet. That part didn't land. We ended up at urgent care anyway. Different room, same tension. Doctors asked questions. X-rays happened. The verdict came back oddly anticlimactic. No immediate danger. Monitor her. Let nature do its thing. Keep an eye out. Relief washed over everyone all at once. You could feel it. That's when someone finally laughed. Not me, them. Someone joked about modern parenting. Someone else shook their head and said, this would be a story one day. The same people who'd looked at me like I was heartless minutes earlier were suddenly breathing again. No one apologized. I didn't expect one. Later, when things were quiet, my sister admitted she'd panicked and lashed out. I told her I got it. Fear makes people sharp. Humor makes them suspicious. I still don't think I was wrong. Timing, maybe. Delivery, definitely. But in that moment, I saw a calm child and a room full of adults feeding off each other's fear. Sometimes laughter isn't disrespect. Sometimes it's a pressure valve. And sometimes the weirdest idea in the room turns out to be the one that proves everything's going to be okay. The silence in the bleachers felt louder than the crowd. I was watching my oldest warm up when I sensed someone standing too close, the kind of closeness that isn't accidental. I didn't turn right away. I already knew who it was. She waited until the whistle blew, then leaned in like we were old friends catching up. Her voice was soft, careful. The opening move of a negotiation, she talked about how hard things had gotten. Rising costs, kids outgrowing shoes, bills stacking up. I nodded politely, still watching the field, already uneasy about where this was headed. Then she said the part she'd clearly practiced, that maybe it was time I reconsidered the money. My chest tightened, not because I was confused, because I understood exactly what she meant. Years earlier, I'd walked away from a marriage that felt like drowning on land. I carried the work, the schedules, the exhaustion, the emotional labor. When I finally left, I didn't take revenge. I took responsibility for my kids, for stability. For peace, he rebuilt his life fast. New partner, new babies, new chaos. I rebuilt slower, intentionally. My home became calm, predictable, safe. The kids noticed. They always notice. She kept talking. Said I was doing well now. Said I didn't need the help anymore. Said it would be the compassionate thing to do, considering all the children involved. There it was, the pivot, turning my kids' support into a moral test. I felt that familiar heat rise, not anger, resolve. I told her the money wasn't a bonus check or a kindness fund. It existed because my children existed. It wasn't mine to give away, reduce, or redistribute based on someone else's choices. And I made it clear that while I hoped every child was cared for, the responsibility for hers didn't land on me. Her expression changed instantly. Sympathy hardened into offense. She said I lacked empathy, that I was punishing innocent kids. I almost laughed at the irony. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I simply held the line. The conversation ended abruptly. She walked off, shaken, like she hadn't expected resistance. Like boundaries were an unexpected obstacle. Later, I found out they'd complained. Quietly, casually, hoping someone else would pressure me into folding. No one did. What followed wasn't dramatic. No courtroom scenes. No shouting matches. Just something better. Consistency. The payments stayed the same. The kids stayed grounded. My household stayed steady. And the requests stopped. Sometimes people mistake firmness for cruelty. They confuse accountability with selfishness. But protecting what your children are owed isn't cold. It's clarity. I didn't say her kids didn't matter. I said they weren't mine to carry. And for the first time in a long while, that truth didn't need defending.